Dear Sangha, we've been looking at what is chapter 11 of the Chinese Dhammapada, and that is the equivalent of chapter 3 of the Pali Dhammapada. And the reason for that is because the Chinese version has 5 extra chapters at the beginning, which the Pali version doesn't have. So the Pali version is there and the Chinese version is there, but they don't look very much like each other. And after we studied chapter 11, we will study chapter 10. And chapter 10 is equivalent to which chapter in Pali? 2, yeah? So, I don't know why. Oh, I said 5. I should have said 8. There's 8 extra chapters at the beginning. Yeah, so chapter 2 go with chapter 10. And when we study chapter 10, we will see that the Pali and the Chinese are really like each other, quite like each other, which we don't see in the case of chapter 3 and chapter 11. So I don't know why that is. Never mind. We can be aware of that. So now to begin with, just to look again at chapter 3 of the Pali, I should like to look at the verse number 8. And I would like to retranslate it. So the first line, we are talking about the mind. And the first line talks about a mind which, here it says, not filled with desire. But really what it says in the Pali is that it doesn't have the ashravas. Do you know the word asava? Asrava. That word in Chinese Vietnamese is lao, 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 vo lao, hu lao. Yeah. So this means somebody who does not have the asavas. And you know that someone who doesn't have the asavas is an arahat, or they have practiced very diligently, and they have realized the freedom from the asavas. Asava means a leak. It means something is leaking out of. Usually, if they talk about when a tree, sometimes some sap, it leaks out of the tree. So the sap doesn't go to all the leaves, but it leaks out of the trunk. So that is the original meaning of the word asava. And I think lao, it also has that meaning of leaking out. So that means that we still have some difficulties leaking out of us. And the asavas, usually they're talked about as 4. And the first one is called karma, and karma means desire. And the second one is called bhava, and bhava means being. So you're caught in ideas of being and still caught in ideas of non-being. Because being, it goes with non-being. And the next one is called ditthi, and ditthi means views. So you're still caught in your own views. And the last one is called avijja, and avijja means ignorance. It means confusion. It means delusion. So you can see that all these 4 things, they really are linked to each other. Because when our mind is still deluded, still caught in representation, rather than see directly the true nature of things, then we continue to be caught in being and to be caught in our views and to be deluded. So really here, this is what the first line should say. For one whose mind is free from those four things, the four asavas. And the next line is also for someone whose mind is not struck. Well, struck here means that you are you're still confused. Your mind's still not clear. Your mind is not clear. So the next line is the one I would like to look at. And the word in Sanskrit for merit is punya. So people talk, when they talk in terms of Hinduism, and we talk in terms of Buddhism, we talk about merit. We talk about making merit. And then the opposite is making demerit. So often we talk about the merit of our ancestors. We feel grateful for the merit that our ancestors have produced because it helps us to go on our path of practice. We don't feel that is our own merit. But on the other hand, we want to be able to produce merit so we can hand it on to our descendants. We don't want it just to keep it for ourselves. So that is why whenever we finish reciting the sutra, we always have to hoi hướng. We have to offer up the merit. I don't want to keep it for myself. I want it to be for my descendants or for my father, my mother, my teacher, and so on. So that is why in our practice we really want to make merit. We don't want to make demerit. So why here does it say has gone beyond merit and demerit? It sounds as if that person isn't interested in making merit anymore. And so now we are talking about an enlightened one who's gone, has no more asavas. Sometime when you read about the King Chan Duc, and one day he was talking to his teacher, Master Tuệ Trung, and asking why Master Tuệ Trung is not vegetarian. And Master Tuệ Trung told him that practicing the precepts and practicing nhẫn what's that? Endurance, patience, practicing patience. It makes more demerit. It doesn't make merit. And then afterward, the Master Tuệ Trung said, "Don't share that with anybody." And now we share it with everybody. We all know about that. So somehow it gets shared with us. But that was a teaching that he needed to give, and he was enlightened, and he wanted to teach his disciple like that. Because we have to be careful. We always have to be careful not to be caught in making merit in such a way that we lose our original vow to liberate our mind and help others be liberated. So that is mainly because we get caught in our idea of a separate self. There is a separate self who makes merit, and then in the next life they will have a good next life because they made merit. And so if we're not careful when we talk about merit and demerit, we can be talking about a separate self. And so we always remember that making merit is not for us as a separate self. So that's one point of view. And then if we look deeply, we will also see that when we talk about the store consciousness, when we talk about alaya, we say that it's it's indeterminate, that ideas of right and wrong are not present in alaya. Ideas of right and wrong are in the mind consciousness, are made by our mind consciousness. So we don't want to be caught in absolute, this is absolute right, this is absolute wrong. And I always have to do like this to make merit, because I may be caught in an idea of what is right and wrong, and not the reality, and therefore I'm not helping myself and not helping others. So when Thầy taught in the book Con đã có đường đi, this is a book about the 5 mindfulness trainings. Thầy also taught about metta ethics. Metta ethics là siêu lý luận không hay. Metta ethics. That is the teachings that underlie, what is it that underlies ethics? And that thing that underlies ethics is that if you don't have merit, you can't have demerit. And you don't have demerit, you can't have merit. The two opposites, they need each other. So if you say, I want to get rid of all the demerit, so I only have merit, it's not possible. Wherever there's merit, there's also demerit. That is how our mind consciousness works, in pairs of opposites. But that is not the deepest reality. The deepest reality is to be able to see that merit and demerit, they need each other. So when you can see like that, it means that your practice of merit is much deeper. It's not caught in ideas, and it can respond to the present moment. Because if we have ideas about merit and demerit, they're ideas that we get from the past and we impose on the future, and it doesn't make it possible for us to respond to the present moment. But we are not vô học, we are hữu học. Like we are not beyond, we are not at that stage. So we have to be very careful when we talk in these terms of going beyond merit and demerit. But at the same time, we have to realize that there is a level which we can touch, which go beyond good and evil, and therefore beyond merit and demerit. And when we touch that level, we have a much deeper understanding of the precepts and ethics. And we can practice then in a way that really responds with compassion to the present moment. That is what Master Tuệ Trung, he wants to help master a bamboo forest to be able to do that. That's why he gave that teaching. So the last line, it may help us to understand that a little more, because the last line, it says that the awakened one who has gone beyond ideas of merit and demerit is free from fear. So then we have this feeling afraid. And so for some people, practicing merit and demerit is based on fear. Fear, if I do this, what will happen to me? I will get bad karma. So we need to go a bit further than that. I think yesterday, maybe when you listened to the talk last night, you heard a bit about fear, is that right? And that we act out of love rather than acting out of fear. So if we do something because we are afraid of the getting bad karma, it's okay, because that may be a good reason for encouraging us. Like sometimes when you go into the temple, you see pictures of hell. And ancestral teachers, they have painted pictures of hell. That is to make you a bit afraid that you will practice the 5 mindfulness trainings so you don't have to go to places like that. But we also have to be careful not to always be acting out of fear, because fear and superstition, they go together. Maybe. So sometimes we act because we are a little bit superstitious, and that is based on our fear of what will happen. Yeah. So please understand the meaning of that like this. So now we will leave verse 8 of the Pali version, and we will go to verse 10 of the Chinese version. Tâm, the mind, Yu Tao Su. So the mind has already created the environment, coming and going without beginning. Most thinking is wrong thinking, causing bad karma for oneself. So this verse is very appropriate for our own time. The mind has already created the environment. Su here we translate as environment, the place that we find ourselves in, the world we find ourselves in, the global warming that we find ourselves in now. That is Su. And our environment, it includes our Sangha, includes Plum village, includes France, and then Europe, and then the whole planet Earth. So our mind has already created that. And that mind has been coming and going with no beginning. There's no beginning, it means no end. So if you read astrophysicists, they talk a lot about beginning and end. They talk about the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang, They talk about the end of the universe, the big crunch that will happen in hundreds of millions of years from now. And the universe that is expanding and the universe that is contracting. So now our universe is expanding. And there'll be a time when it stops expanding and then it contracts and then it will come to an end. So these are theories. But also there are some scientists, like Stephen Hawking, who have suggested that if the universe is completely self-contained, having no boundary, normally we think of the universe have a boundary, it would have no beginning or end. So then he said there'll be no place for God because God created the universe, but it doesn't have a beginning, so we can't talk about God. So beginning and end are concepts that are created by our mind. And we cannot find a beginning or an end to our mind. And this mind, in its coming and its going, it has prepared, it has already made the environment. And then our wrong thinking, most of our thinking is wrong thinking, based on wrong views, upside down thinking. And our own thinking, it makes suffering for ourselves. So if we think about the environment is collective, is part of our collective consciousness. The global warming is made by our collective consciousness. It's a little bit like when we talk about the two kinds of retribution, Chân báo and Y báo. We talk about our personal retribution, which is our own 5 skandhas, and we talk about the environmental retribution which we live in. So we have 2 kinds of retribution. And in our personal retribution, we see more that is what we do, how we think, how we speak, and then we receive that back. And in the environmental retribution, we see that there's also the collective. For instance, if you weren't all here, we wouldn't have Plum Village. You can't have one person make Plum Village. So when you put yourself in Plum Village, you put yourself in that environment, you enjoy the collective karma of Plum Village. And living in the world, we enjoy the collective karma of all species. But the important thing that this verse wants to tell us is that the mind is responsible for the way that the environment is. And so out of our wrong thinking, that is out of our craving, our attachment, out of our hatred, our anger, and out of our delusion, and most of all our delusion, we make the environment. We can see that the sky and the earth are polluted by carbon footprint, greenhouse gases, and all these things pollute. But when we ask where this pollution comes from, we see that it comes from our mind of craving, or our mind of delusion, of not knowing what we're doing. And that is why we need to take care of our mind as a collective in order to be able to put an end to the destruction that we do to our environment. And taking care of our mind as a collective, we have to start off with everybody's individual mind. So in verse 11, it also repeats the idea, but this time it doesn't use the word tam, it used the word e. So before we were talking about the mind in general. In in Sanskrit there are 3 words for mind and so on, and they're also in Chinese. Oh, it's blue. This is citta, and they translate into Chinese, Vietnamese Chinese. And then second one is manas. Manas. And they translate that. So 3 words, and often when the Buddha teaches, in the original teachings of the Buddha said they're all the same. So don't worry which one you used. If you talk about the practice, of how you practice with your mind, you can practice with any of these and it's the same. So citta usually means like it includes your heart, includes your emotions. And E, it's mostly your thinking. And Vijnana is your consciousness. So it can be any of the 8 consciousnesses. But really, if you just use if you say, I'm going to take care of my mind, you can practice to take care of any of those. It's okay, all mean the same thing really. It's only when you come to Buddhist psychology that they start making distinction between these 3 things. So it's not so important when you read the source Buddhism, when you read the sutra that we're reading now, that kind of sutra, the kind of sutras that the Buddha, we say when the Buddha was alive, the Buddha spoke. It doesn't really matter, these words, they all more or less mean the same thing. So the idea in verse 11 is don't blame your mother and your father when something goes wrong. Mind is your mind that you need to take care of. So we should go in the wholesome direction and make merit, and not turn back. Because we can lose our merit, and then we won't be able to continue on our path of practice. And we have merit. We have merit that has been handed down by our ancestors. And we want to make use of it in order to continue in the direction that they have begun for us, and not turn back. In the Pali version, it says that the verse is more or less the same. In the last verse of the Pali version, neither mother nor father or any other relatives can do more good for you than your own rightly motivated mind can do for yourself. Now we look at verse 12. This is about the turtle or the tortoise. It has this head, its 4 legs and its tail and a shell. And when it can pull all of those limbs back into the shell. So they're called the six limbs. And like a tortoise, you have to protect your 6 limbs, because the shell doesn't protect them unless you pull them back inside. So you have to pull them back inside. So this means that your 6 senses, you need to protect them, not listen or look at or touch things that damage your mind. Guarding your 6 senses, the sense impression food, like you have to guard your mind, your thinking, like a citadel. It's also about guarding your 6 senses. Your mind is one of your 6 senses. So be careful what we look at, careful what we listen to, but also careful what we think. Because our thinking also goes out into the world. So we need to stop certain of our senses going out like that. And we do that with mindfulness of what we are looking at and what effect it has on us, and mindfulness of what we are thinking and what effect it has on us. And when we see that it's not right, we bring it back straight away into our safe citadel. Insight. With insight, you can You can fight against Mara. You can, and you be victorious, and without the coming back, without going back, without regression. So normally, if we have insight, then we see the Mara in us. You can either see Mara outside of you, or you can recognize Mara inside of you. And sometimes we feel, oh, there's some kind of Mara in the atmosphere. But really the real Mara that we need to deal with before we can deal the Mara around us is the Mara inside of us. So when we see some attachment coming up, we see some hatred coming up, we have to say, hello Mara. And when we say, hello Mara, Mara will say, oh, you've recognized me. So I'm not strong enough to fight against you anymore. That is your way that you fight against Mara. It's not like a battle. They use the word chiến, but word for battle, but it's not really that you have a battle inside yourself with Mara. Because you also feel compassion for the Mara in you. You also know that this habit energy that you have is handed down to you for a long time. It's not something you want to fight with. The way that you fight with it is with your insight, and that is with your looking deeply and your understanding. And that isn't really fighting. That is just recognizing non-violent resistance. And you would think that once sometimes you think, with my insight and my understanding, that Mara won't ever come back. But then the habit energy is still there in the depth of our consciousness, and Mara comes back again. So here they say that make the kind of victory that Mara won't come back again. I don't know if you can be sure that Mara won't come back again. But at least you can be sure that if Mara does come back again, you know what to do, and no harm will come of it. So thank you for listening to chapter 11 or chapter 3. We'll listen to the sound of the bell. So dear Sangha, this is chapter 10. You can see the first 5 verses on the board, but maybe it's all Chinese to you and nothing much you can do with it. This chapter 10 is chapter 2 in Pali. Before I practiced Buddhism, I somehow read this verse somewhere, the first verse of the Pali Dhammapada. And I was very moved when I read it. I didn't understand it. I don't think I understood it, but I don't know why. I thought it's terribly important, this verse. So I used to go around singing it everywhere. And Now I'm going to sing what I used to sing. It's not very beautiful. Wakefulness is the way to immortality. Heedlessness is the way to death. Those who are wakeful cannot die. The heedless are as if already dead. Wakefulness is the way to immortality. Heedlessness is the way to death. The wakeful can never die. The heedless are as if already dead. So I don't think I really understood it. Well, I may have done, but anyway, on some level or another. So this this chapter is called wakefulness, or apamada. In Chinese it's called phong yak. It's up on the board there. Here. This one, I think. Is this right? Yeah. I don't know, it's the opposite in Chinese and in Pali. In this apamada. When the Buddha was, the last words the Buddha said, according to Ananda handed down to us, was apamadena samji. Apamadena the samskaras, sankara, vaya dhamma sankara, apamada samhi, apamadena something. It means vaya dhamma sankara. It means the samskaras, the formations are vaya dhamma, are subject to destruction. They have to dissolve, they have to fall apart. Your body has to fall apart. Your body is a formation. Yeah. So practice diligently with this wakefulness, apamadena. Practice diligently with careful attention. So in Chinese they translate that as apamada, and they translate as So we're surprised because here you don't see this word. You see the opposite. So this means, if you have just pamada, it means careless. It means negligent. It means lazy. Loose. Dissipated, all that kind of meaning. It's not a good meaning, if you have that. But if you put ap on that, it means not careless. It means careful attention, doing everything with care. It means not lazy. And so why they don't put the not, I don't know, but they just put this bit. So this Chinese word is made up of two words. And the first word, it means to let go. You may think, oh, let go is good. You know, we have the song, let it all go or something. Freedom, let it all go. But sometimes there's things we don't want to let go. We shouldn't let go of. You can't say, oh, I just lie back and let it all go. You have to do something. You have to know when to let go and when not to let go. And this letting go here, is, as you can see by the second word, is not the kind of letting go we should practice. And when you're doing total relaxation, you can say, oh, breathing in, I let everything go. It's fine. Let go of everything. Sometime Thai, when he was teaching total relaxation, you know, Thai used to lead total relaxation at one time. Thai would always say at the end, let go of everything. And it was very beautiful total relaxation. But we have to know when it's time to let go and when it's time to keep practicing, keep on doing the practice. So this word here, I think in modern Chinese, does it mean to retire? It means to withdraw, to draw back. And it sometimes means ease. So we also know sometimes it's very good to practice being at ease. We say, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I feel at ease. And so you withdraw. So you can have a holiday or something like that. So when you put the two words together, it can mean a little bit laziness, negligence, not taking care of what needs to be taken care. So like we said before, opposites, they're always in each other. So there's always some good in ease, but if you take it the wrong way, it's something not beneficial for your practice. And there's some good in letting go, but if you let go of the wrong things, it's not beneficial for your practice. So that is up to our intelligence to recognize that. In the Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 10, Sutra number 15, that doesn't have an equivalent in Chinese. So, bhikkhus, whatever beings there are, whether they have no feet, like a worm or something like that, or whether they have 2 feet, like a bird or a human being, or whether they have 4 feet, like a cow or a sheep, or whether they have many, many feet, There are also insects that have many, many feet. Whether they have form or they don't, whether they have perceptions or not. Well, there are, or neither have perceptions or do not have perceptions. So these are all the kind of beings that exist, and some beings we cannot see them. In the time of the Buddha, you used to be able to see the gods, but nowadays we don't see gods. Some people, they see fairies, they see spirits, and other people don't. It depends who you are. So there are beings that have form and beings that don't have form. So some beings, some of the gods, they dwell in a kind of meditation that they don't have perception, but they do not have perception. So there are all these many kind of beings. And among all those beings, the Tathagata is spoken of, the Buddha is spoken of as being the highest. I really like this chapter because normally you would say of all human beings, the Tathagata is the highest. But it says of all beings. So it means of all the worms, the Tathagata is the highest. So it doesn't make human beings better than other beings. It recognizes that all beings rather than all human beings. This does away with one of our wrong perceptions that is talked about in the Vajracchedika Sutra, the idea of a human being. So just as the Tathagata is the highest of all, is spoken of as the highest, and also be careful because has the word spoken of. He doesn't say is the highest. So of all the wholesome dharmas, of all the wholesome mental formations, appamada, careful attention, this appamada is the highest. It is the root all other wholesome dharmas. It's the root of other wholesome dharmas. Careful attention is the root of wholesome dharmas. And all wholesome dharmas have their meeting place. They all come together in wholesome attention, in careful attention. Therefore it is spoken of as the highest. And then after that the Buddha gives other examples, like of all the bark of trees, the sandalwood is the most fragrant, and all the stars and the planets, the moon is the brightest, and all the light, the sun that comes up in the autumn, out of the autumn mist, is the most beautiful light, and all the rivers and waters, the ocean is the one that they all go back to. So this is how the Buddha describes this mental formation that we call careful attention. And if you look in the list of 51 mental formations, you will see that appamada is careful attention is one of the 11 wholesome mental formations. And that is in Chinese is that form? Yeah. And then you will see that in the 20 upaklesha, which means the 20 unwholesome formation, the 20 secondary unwholesome formations, you will see pamada. That is the opposite of careful attention. So they are both mental formations that we can cultivate in our daily life. So why do we say that it's the way to immortality? wakefulness is the way to immortality. If you look at the Chinese Yume and you understand Chinese Yume, you see the word Kamlo, the 1, 2, in the first line. And then you see the way, the way of Tao. Kamlo Tao. And but they don't use the word why not? Because it's so long, it's 3 syllables. And they only have 5 syllables, so they can't put 3, and it's not enough to say the way to immortality. So they have to put something to replace the word careful attention. And what do they put? They put the word for precepts. Refraining from doing things which we should not do. And that is how they translate appamada. And they have to do that because of the verse. So several times we will see they have to find a way to translate appamada. But really, it means something like heedfulness, wakefulness, careful attention is the way to immortality. Anattapada. Sometimes people who have been seriously ill and they've asked the doctor how long they have to live, and the doctor say, oh, you have about 3 months if you're lucky. And then those people come to a tea meditation with Thai, or they come visit Thai, and Thai suggests to them how to practice, to live deeply every moment of life. It's not important whether it's 3 months or 3 years. The thing is, can we live deeply now? Can we live with careful attention, diligently now? And they live much longer, many, many years, maybe 19 years, 12 years, longer than the doctor said. So from that point of view, we can see that in a practical, down-to-earth way, that when we practice wakefulness in our daily life, we can make our life much longer in terms of time. But we also know we can be outside of time. And when we practice dwelling perfectly in the present moment with careful attention, we touch eternity. We're no longer caught in ideas of time. And we see that time isn't something that stretches out in a line, but it's just being able to go deeply into the present moment, and then there is no beginning and no end. So wakefulness is the way to immortality. It can mean that also. And of course, if you drive your car carefully, you're mindful at every moment, or any other activity we do, we're much safer than when we practice careful attention. But I don't think that's what it means here. I think it means more here we touch the non-beginning and the non-end. We touch eternity in the present moment. Or when we say, I have arrived, I am home, and we practice walking meditation and we take a step, deeply touch the present moment, then we say, in the ultimate I dwell, or the door to no birth and no death is open. So that is probably more what it means. And then the opposite is obviously true, that if we practice the opposite and we don't pay careful attention, then we're on the way to to death. The wakeful, the heedful, those who pay careful attention do not die. And those who are heedless, yatha mata, are as if already dead. And you remember sometimes Thai has taught about living like a dead person. Right? Because they say as if they are dead. They aren't dead really, but they're as if they are dead. And Thai refers to the novel of Albert Camus, L'étranger. And in that novel there is a murderer who is sentenced to death, and he has a deep experience of being in touch with the ultimate dimension, as in 24 hours he will be executed, and he'll look up through the skylight and see the blue sky, and touches the ultimate dimension of the blue sky. And when the priest comes to do the final confession, he refuses to see the priest, and then he says he is like il vit comme un mort. He lives like a dead person. So sometimes in our life, if we don't live deeply, we could say that we're not really living. Our life, we're not really alive. So this is what this verse refers to here. So if you look at the Chinese, you see that it says that precepts is the first word, are, second word, Gamlo. Gamlo is the name of the lower hamlet. We call Dharmanectar temple. Gam really means sweet, and lo means dew, but it's the word for nectar. And they used to believe that the gods who live a very long time, like the immortals, they drank a certain kind of nectar, and that is what gave them immortality. So we use the word nectar to mean immortality, and Tao means the way to immortality. And then the next line they use the word carelessness. Carelessness is it's another word. The last word is the word is mean the diameter. If you have a circle, and then you have a line that goes across the center of the circle, you can get from one end of the circle, that you can go straight across the circle. Otherwise you have to go all the way around. So really it's a quick way to death, huh? You don't have to go around, you go straight there. And then in the first line they translate careful attention as yoi, and in the third line they translate careful attention as non-attachment, non-craving. Non-craving. So that is one way you can translate careful attention if you don't have enough room for 3 syllables. But it's a little bit different. Of course, if you don't practice careful attention, you get carried away by your craving and your attachment. So in some way they're a little bit alike. And then, so if you have non-craving, then you have immortality, you have non-death. And if you lose your way, thak dao, then you destroy your life, you destroy. So that more or less translate that verse. And now we can look at verse 2. If you like that first verse, you can make better music than I did. The wise ones who thoroughly understand the virtue of careful attention find great joy in careful attention, delighting in the resort of the holy ones. In Chinese say something like, the wise ones who know how to keep to the path are victorious. They put an end to heedlessness, and non-attachment brings the joy, and there follows the happiness of realizing the path. So this verse is about joy and happiness. What is the point of practicing if the practice doesn't bring us joy and happiness? If it makes us chán, if it makes us weary and tired and so careful attention isn't something that is a hard labor and you force yourself to do, but it's like a sweet nectar that brings you joy. If you're practicing right, it should bring you joy. So the wise ones who understand the virtue of careful attention, you understand what a benefit it is when you do everything carefully with attention, then you will find a joy in doing that. You wake up in the morning and you carefully put your slippers on your feet and you carefully walk to the bathroom and wash your face with careful attention. You can have happiness straight away. So here it said that those who they find great joy in careful attention, and it is the enjoyment of living in the resort of the noble ones. That is hiền giả, the noble ones, the ones who they don't put it, No, they don't have that word in Chinese. The word here is the resort. In Thailand, we practice leading retreats in a resort. That is the place where people go and they spend their holidays. So I think many of our sisters and brothers, you probably understand the word resort like that. Place where they have swimming pool and people go and spend their holiday. But resort doesn't mean that. Resort is a special word in Pali. And this word is actually in another gatha in the Dhammapada in Chinese and in Pali. And that is the gatha that say, the birds take their resort in the sky, and the deer resort to the countryside, and those who discriminate resort to the Dharma, and the holy ones resort is nirvana. And resort here means the place you go back to. It means the place you like to stay in, you like to dwell in. And nirvana is the resort of the holy ones. The sky is the resort of the birds. And here, those who practice careful attention, they enjoy the resort of the noble ones. And there's one of the touching of the earth that I mentioned last time is about the house of the Tathagata, living the house of the Tathagata. And we can live 24 hours a day in the house of the Tathagata. So this is what it means here. We don't have to go to a special place in order to be in the house of the Tathagata. It depends on our practice of careful attention whether we are in the house of the Tathagata or not. Okay, we'll do one more verse, is that okay? Okay. Verse 3. I'm translating from Pali, so it's a bit different from the Chinese. Those who are always engaged in meditation, permanently persevering in strong effort, Fusante, brave, they are brave. They touch nirvana, the incomparable safety from bondage. So in the Chinese you have Yi Niam Dao. That is how they translate meditation. So in Pali, the word for always is satatika, and that word means in every activity. So they are engaged in meditation in every activity. So that is the practice of Plum Village, that everything we do is in mindfulness and in meditation. So before we talked about waking up in the morning and practicing careful attention. And we are really lucky to have the gathas because they help us to practice satatika, help us to practice in every activity, to practice meditation. From the time we get up and we practice waking up this morning, I smile. I think also we can make our own gathas sometimes. And we can change a little bit the gathas we have to make them more relevant, and so they don't just become an out of form and something that we repeat every day, but we don't really do it anymore. So in the beginning, when you learn the gathas, they're very fresh, and you really practice as you do them. But when you've been doing it for a few years, then you just say the words and you might forget what you're doing even. So sometimes we need to write our own gathas, find our own words. It's good practice. Then when you have to write your insight gatha for receiving the lamp, you already have a lot of practice writing your own gathas. So the practice needs to be fresh and renewed. And one time Thai gave me a practice that I really like for keeping careful attention in my daily life. And Thai said that it's like when you have a video, somebody taking a film with a video camera, and they say, oh, now she is doing this, or now he's walking towards the meditation hall, and you give a commentary on on what the person you're taking a film. And I said, you can imagine you're taking a video film of yourself and you're making the commentary. Now I'm walking to the meditation hall. Now I'm following my breathing. And that commentary, it reminds you to stay in the present moment and keep the careful attention of each thing you are doing. Now I'm putting my cup down on the table. I'm pouring my tea. So you can try that if you like. The important word here is the word thường. The important word is the word nichang. Nichang is the word meaning permanent, but here it means always. And the effort is kept alive, strong. Even though our body is weak, our mind, it needs to be strong. So the word cường thủ chẳng hạn, in the second line, strong. And then the word in the third line, kiên, the first word of the third line on the board is also third line of the third verse, is also brave, strong. And they realize đồ thế here is the way they translate nirvana. They go to the other shore, go to nirvana. And then they use the word cắt tưởng, the last line. Cắt tưởng, it means very fortunate, it means good luck, good fortune. They have the good fortune. I think they didn't know how to translate yoga keman. Cắt tưởng is okay. Nirvana, if you cắt tưởng is okay. To translate nirvana as cắt tưởng is all right, but it's not quite right. And later on, the translators, they had to find good words, because in the beginning they didn't have the words in Chinese, and now they use Niết Bàn. They take the Sanskrit word and put it in Chinese, but then they didn't do that. They didn't take the Sanskrit word. They have to find a way to translate nirvana. So they say đồ thế and cắt tưởng, whereas in Pali it's nirvana. So they touch nirvana. So later on, everybody liked to think that nirvana is something very special and is reserved only after you die. And it's clear from the early teachings of the Buddha that nirvana is available, and what we need to do is to touch nirvana and not wait until we die to hopefully touch nirvana, but touch it in our daily life by our practice of careful attention, of mindfulness. And then they use the word brave, strong and brave. And it doesn't mean physical strength. But in order to be able to touch nirvana, you need a bit of bravery. I give the example of when you're lying in bed in the morning, it's very warm, and it's time to go to the meditation, and it's in the middle of the winter, and you have to go outside to go to the meditation hall. So you think, why don't I just snuggle down under the blankets and maybe miss the meditation one day. After all, I worked very hard yesterday. I was on the cooking team. It was very tiring. So you snuggle under your blankets and you stay there. But if you're lucky, your elder brother comes along and I have to laugh now, but anyway. Take the blanket off. hopefully not your elder sister. And so I'm referring to my past. So, and then you get up and you're so glad that you walk out and you can breathe the fresh morning air, see the sky filled with stars. And if you stayed in your bed, you wouldn't have been able to enjoy any of those things. So I say that's a little bit like when we touch nirvana, we have to be strong in our mind, we have to be brave in order to let go of comforts, emotional comforts or material comforts. And then nirvana is there available for us, or the incomparable safety from our bondage. Yoga Keman. Yeah, thank you, dear Sangha.